There's certain assets we deployed in the region that are scrambling IRGC radar and or air defense. That's not confirmed. I'm just saying there's open intelligence sources that illustrate that that's what's occurring. The Mullah regime, in response to, well, as you pointed out, to the two ships they've taken over, the Mullah regime is engaged in continually active acts, or has engaged in acts of provocation, while they're trying to say, oh, well, they want to talk. This is kind of like the nonsense the Muller regime pulled. It very much smacks of that right prior to the 12-day war. As far as the nature about why the Muller regime is probably targeting the tankers they did and offering the bullshit reason they did, well, they're modifying their actions to back up anti-Trump elements in the United States. Well, like Donald's taking tankers that have restricted or sanctioned oil. They're doing the same. No, it's not the same thing. No, it's not the same thing. And it's not the same thing because of the nature of the actor that's engaged in it. For instance, I'm going to use this as an example because people try to do moral flattening, whether it's leftist or members of the Red Green Alliance or whoever, right? Autocratic bloc, pick whoever. Take a child mannequin, right? If you have a child mannequin in a children's department store, it's viewed as benign, non-threatening. If you find the exact same child mannequin in the house of a convicted pedophile, it takes on an entirely different meaning. The point is the nature of the act is defined by the legitimacy of the act is defined by the nature of the actor that engages in it. There's a big difference between, say, law enforcement and bank robber, intelligence officer like Savak and terrorist organizations, or the CIA or Green Berets and insurgents. There's another point that's going on in the broader things, at least that jump to mind. As you know, there were Russian planes that landed in Cuba, and that's one of the other things we're getting ready to hit. There's a lot of issues with regards to what the violent communist Castro regime, or the direct descendant of the Castro regime, Raouf and all that people, are begging Putin's criminalized counterintelligence for to try to defend their island from, being, well, their regime from being removed from that island like it should be. So, given how things are moving in a broader geopolitical and geostrategic perspective, remember I talk about how the Mullah regime is a proxy for the autocratic bloc, Putin's criminalized continental state, Chinese Communist Party, and all those actors are coordinating their efforts to try and leverage the other actors in the coordinated bloc to bleed out the United States. This might be this might be an attempt to do that. Putin has said, oh,
Okay.
well, he'll respond to weapons being deployed in Greenland. Well, then we're going to still deploy stuff in Greenland. That also illustrates why Greenland's
Okay,
so
Jeffrey, going back to my question, if you
right.
can,
All right,
because I
good
want to
stuff.
go to the, if I want to get to the list, we want to get to the list, but really quickly, from a survival perspective, not from a moral perspective or a legal perspective, why the fuck would the Islamic Republic take those ships? If you can, very quickly.
Maybe that they're looking to sit there, and maybe they're framing their position from such a domain of loss that they're gaming that this act allows or enables the never Trumpers in the United States to try and politically undermine the national will regarding striking the Mullah regime, as you had said in the previous, very insightfully, by the way, Armin. I mean, I'm so proud of how you developed so quickly. It's unreal. What you said yesterday in yesterday's show, there's a difference between military capability and political capability, read national will. So maybe I'm only spitballing here, right? Maybe the Mullah regime chose to engage in that particular action because they view the relative cost benefit as it would undermine or enable never Trumpers in the United States by saying, well, see, they're doing the same thing Donald's doing, in the hope of reducing support for President Trump and subsequently national will to hit the Mullah regime. I promise you that's not going to bear out well for them because
Let me give you another theory, and you just tell me if this is how possible you think this is. Here's a possible situation. There are people within IRGC that are trying to force with the Islamic Republic to start the war sooner because their calculation is that the war is going to start early. The United States is planning to attack us. So any second that we delay, we're just allowing our enemies to prepare more. Given that they're going to attack anyway, we should be actually starting the war now so that we start with less preparation for United States. Some parts of the Islamic Republic is trying to force the hand of the rest of the Islamic Republic into basically starting the war already. What do you think?
That's a good point, that no actor is a homogenized block. And of course, you're going to have ranges of different people with different levels of risk acceptance and or commitment to aggression. And I mean, that would be a really long list to go through with regards to the Mullah regime. So that's not an unreasonable assessment. Maybe the more you mentioned this again the other day, it was so insightful. You had mentioned how the more clerically inclined, let's say doctrinaire elements of the Mullah regime view any kind of diplomacy as jahiliya. You are sitting there engaging in apostasy and they should go after their enemy no matter what. They want to bring on the 12th Imam and all that. There's that element, that there's that underlying motive. It could be that certain elements are, let's say, lesser theologically motivated relative to those
Or
radical pragmatic. Let's just say they're lesser radical, like lesser theologically inclined, although still somewhat theologically inclined, are gaming out the risk cost benefit analysis, risk assessment differently from each other. And so it bears itself out operationally by seeing things like what you're seeing right now. If the unconfirmed reports are true that the United States is hitting or attacking the Mullah regime's air defense with electronic warfare, coupled with some of the other things that are happening, it means we're probably moving. It tells me those are other indicators moving towards a strike, which hopefully, if it goes very strong, I mean, what Donald just said like a couple hours ago was, look, if they do a certain thing, it's going to be very bad for them what happens to them. Like he said that. Donald is not one to screw with. Like he will let those bombs and missiles fly. That's what it shows me
right.
anyway.
Okay. All right. Sorry, guys. Let's go through the list. And
Yes.
BT, by the
So
way, I want you to also add yourself sometimes to the list because I'm really interested in what you have to say as well sometimes. But if you, no pressure.
when I think of something good, I
Okay.
will add myself. So we have a question first and then Cat Lady. Someone messaged in from Iran. They said that their connection is not great, and so ideally this will go onto YouTube and they'll be able to watch later. They would like to know your personal opinion regarding the Safavid dynasty's contribution to the so called Golden Age of Islam. And they wanted to also point out that they are very against Islam.
Well, the golden age of is what people, again, I don't like to call it the golden age of Islam. It's the golden age of the Middle East and North Africa. Islam was not a contributing factor. Okay. If you look at the people who were involved in the Golden Age, they were constantly meeting with Islam as an obstacle in the way of the progress. Like all the people who were involved in the science and the philosophy and the technology, they had to keep dancing around the limitations of Islam to be able to contribute, to give their country to deliver their contribution to society. And in fact, the golden age of Islam was so-called the golden age of Islam happened in a period where Islamic laws were not being enforced as strictly, and these areas actually went downhill as soon as Islamic rules became people became more observant, and the rulers that came to power were more strict with Islamic law. So yeah, so it had nothing to do with Islam. I mean, it had something indirectly to do with Islam. Is indirectly in the sense that whenever you have wealth concentrated in an area, and as soon as the war ends, that wealth starts generating, trade, and then the trade requires intellectuals, and then some people will become rich enough to basically spend their time on philosophy and science and poetry and arts. So it's a function of wealth, not a function of Islam. But Islam did spend multiple years. Islam was responsible for the wars and the conquests and then the pillaging, and eventually that wealth made these empires rich, and that the wealth is the reason why we have the poetry and the philosophy and the art and the science and everything. But that's just a function of concentration of wealth anywhere. Like that had nothing to do with Islam. It's just a function of getting rich. And Islam has always had a negative influence. But when you say the Safavid dynasty, that's not the same time period where people talk about the golden age of Islam. The golden age of Islam is when the Abbasid dynasty, I mean, the so called golden age of Islam is when the Abbasid dynasty was in power. During the Safavid dynasty, we had the Sunnis were the Ottomans, and then Iran switched from being Sunni to being Shia by the Safavids, and the Safavids were quite barbaric. They, and I'm not kidding. Like I don't think anybody refers to it. They literally ate people alive as torture, and I'm not exaggerating that. They would capture people, and they would, as a form of torture, while they were alive, while they were going to listening to them screaming in pain, they would eat them while they're still living. So yeah, golden age, no. Yeah, raw. Yeah, raw. Like Danny's saying, raw. Yeah, raw and alive, not just raw, but also alive, as a form of torture. So as a form of like basically scaring their enemies. So yeah, golden age. I don't know. Safavid. We don't like we Iranians don't consider. Like I have never heard anybody refer to the Safavid period as the golden age. But yeah, all right. So I think that answers the question.
Okay, next is
Yeah.
Kat.
Cat lady? Who? Is she still here?
She's not currently in the call.
Okay, next we have Payman.
Payment.
Hello, everyone. Do you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I typed a message regarding the yesterday. I would like to read it for you. Hi, everyone. I'm truly glad to be here again today. This community has deeply impressed me and given me strength to keep moving forward, even during a very painful time, like many of you. I carry the pain of what is happening to the Iranian people. I'm also personally affected, as a close friend of mine in Tehran was shot. Thankfully, he survived. And for that, I'm deeply, deeply glad and grateful. Yesterday, I was emotional while speaking. I realized my message may not have come across as clearly as I hoped. I apologize for that. After Armin and some of you had to leave, we continue our discussion, and I received incredible amount of emotional support from the members who stayed. I truly appreciate that, especially the kindness and solidarity shown by American, Israeli, and Ukrainian friends. This experience has convinced me that we are more than just a community. We are closer to one another than we may have ever expected. Not long ago, being part of something like this felt like a distant dream, and today we are living it. I would also like to thank Cat Lady for the beautiful video she sent me. It genuinely warmed my heart. And Armina Aziz, Armin John, thank you for creating this space, for giving us the wonderful opportunity to connect and support each other. Finally, as a small member of this global family, I want you all to know that I'm ready to help in any way I can. Thank you so much.
Because she's not here. I wish she was here. So we need to timestamp this and send it to her at some point. But thank you, Payman. That was so beautiful. I really appreciate you saying that. That was so nice. Wish Cat Lady was here. You know.
Okay, we don't have any other hands, so would you like
Okay.
to for a bit?
So before I go through the points that I wanted to make, I just want to say because, Daniel actually raised his hand, but because Samantha was asking, where is Asi? Is he coming back? So the reason why Asi is not here is because he's on Actually, I don't know if I could say that. Yeah, but he's going to be back on February 26th. So he has a good reason for why he's not here. So he's going to be back. So just wanted to make sure. But I saw Daniel raise his hand. So let's go to Daniel.
I had a question recently, like, did Iranians no, well, I asked it differently. I understood that the IRGC had planned how to protests, like how to
Are you talking about the reports that came out that the IRGC had already planned ahead of time regarding how to stop the protests ahead? Yeah.
yeah.
Yes, so apparently Israelis had intelligence already before this massacre happened that the IRGC was planning to kill thousands of people when a protest like this happened, and they already had. So this was not something that they just did pre-planned. They also practiced for it. So they had that intelligence, and they also apparently gave Americans that intelligence that something like this is going to happen.
Like they actually calculated how much do they have to kill so the protests are going down.
Oh, I don't know if that I didn't see that part that they were this exact about it. But I know that they were planning on doing a massacre. So and they were and that this was planned.
And the other question is like, did the Iranians like had I don't know how to like.
So
did they
maybe
planned
write
when?
down so that you could read them from, like, if you need to think about this, maybe write them down so that way you could go through them.
Oh,
Right?
no, just quickly. Like, did they had like planned where when they going to start the protests?
Who? The Iranian people? So you cannot pre-plan when to do the protest, because if you pre-plan the protest, then you're also signaling to the Islamic Republic what to get ready for. So usually the protests happen in reaction. There's a spark that starts the protest, and then Prince Reza Pahlavi comes and mobilizes everybody because something is already getting started. But you cannot pre-plan the protest, because then you're signaling to the Islamic Republic what, when, and where to be ready for us.
First of all, sorry, I left and came back now, so I don't know what you talked about in the last couple of minutes. But I heard something, Armin, that what the Iranian regime tried to attack was like this oil, I don't know how it's called, like this ship which is giving oil to other US like ships or whatever, or airplanes, or like, which is like fueling the army. So it was
Wait, you mean
trying
the oil
to,
tanker? You mean
I
like an oil
think,
tanker?
I'm not sure how it's called, but
Are you
it's like,
talking about a couple of hours ago, the IRGC basically taking stealing some commercial ships? Is that what you're talking about?
no, I'm not sure exactly when. Actually, I didn't like go to like this level of details. About the commercial ships, I heard something else, but I'm not sure if it's true. But
It is.
about the drone attack I'm talking, it was an attempt to get ahead, to like make the forces less flexible and less active. Like if you don't have the fuel, so you have a problem, you know?
I
And
don't I don't think that the Islamic Republic has the capability of targeting any of the, what are those plane calls where they do fueling midair? Like they're so out of touch
that's
when it
only
comes
for
to the.
planes, right?
Yeah, but the Islamic Republic, like the way that these operations go, the Islamic Republic doesn't even have a chance getting close. Like the Islamic Republic's air force is pathetically weak. It's so
Yeah,
pathetically weak that
I,
you have
I, I
no
literally
chance
have,
getting.
have no way to decide whether it's true or not. That's what I heard.
I
I'm just
mean,
bringing
I
it
mean, if it's
as is.
true, they would have. Here's how you decide. If it's true, it would have been widely reported on. So
Or
I'm
not,
assuming it's
because
not
it
true.
was, if it was not like shut down, it would have been like an embarrassment of some sort. I don't know. That's all I know.
Yeah, but other countries would highly report on it if there was any sort of form of if there was even a slight information that this could be true, the foreign media would have widely reported on it by now.
And
I doubt that is true because there's no way that Islamic Republic has that capacity. So it can
yeah, we
like
can
to do anything.
literally never know. We can literally be
Nope,
hearing
we
stories
can't.
like made up in order to make a
No, we can
deception.
know. No, we can know. This is like nothing is 100% certain, but we know that this is out of the range of the Islamic Republic's abilities. And
Okay.
also, if it is true, we know that there are many journalists around the world that would be loving to cover the story. So it's very
No,
like
what I meant,
uh,
sorry to cut you off. I meant like all we know is what they tell us, like the official story of the U.S. like PR.
you could like when it comes to America and Israel, the official story is usually the true story. So we could trust it.
Okay. About the commercial things that earlier today, I don't know exactly how to explain it, but Shaq, what's his name? I cannot remember right now.
Shamkhani?
No, he's an American. He's right now in
Oh, okay.
Syria. He's like an ex-marine. I don't know how much to trust him. I usually trust him like 70-80%,
Okay, okay.
but I'm not
Listen.
sure. So he says something about I'm trying not to be distracted by hearing myself. Sorry. He said something about some Iranians trying to smuggle out some oil in order to sell it illegally for the profit in some nearby country or something like that. Does it ring
They
any
have been
bell?
doing that that they do that constantly. That's not new. So because the fuel in Iran is subsidized, right? It's
Exactly.
very
So,
interesting. But that's always ongoing. That is how they steal from Iranian people. They subsidize it with our wealth, and then the Islamic Republic itself takes the fuel that is subsidized and then sells it outside of Iran, which is basically stealing from the subsidies, right?
so it's
But anyway,
officials.
yeah, it's officials. They do that.
Okay. So he said it
Yeah,
has
yeah,
something to do with it. I didn't
yeah,
completely understand. I don't
yeah.
know. That's
But this goes. This is a constant thing that how this happens. Yeah.
okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, next, Peter.
Do you think that Prince Reza Pahlavi would have known about the intelligence reports that the regime were planning on massacring protests?
Pahlavi, do I think that Prince Reza Pahlavi knew that they would be massacring protesters to this degree? The Islamic Republic would have been massacring protesters in the thousands that they did? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, because you were talking about the intelligence report from Israel, I think it was.
Yeah. So actually, you're pointing. No. He didn't know, right? And some people are wondering why Israel did not share that information with Prince Reza Pahlavi. Some people are also pointing out that usually that form of intelligence doesn't get it is shared with people unless they have really high security clearance. Some people are suggesting that that should have been shared with Prince Reza Pahlavi, that information. But no, he didn't know.
Can I add one thing that I forgot?
Short, very
Quick.
short. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, so next we have Sabina.
I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before when you were on with Goldie, you talked about some people who were, I guess, opposing with some kind of like talk about democracy. And I was wondering if you could tell us more about that, like who they are, and if we should, if we encounter them, if we should try to engage to defend Pahlavi, or what you could tell us about that.
Right. So Prince Reza Pahlavi has this is goes to let me actually give you full context, right? So even before this, many people who were against Prince Reza Pahlavi, they accuse him of wanting to come and bring tyranny to Iran, right? That's the accusation, which is very bizarre because Prince Reza Pahlavi, his entire life has been talking about one thing as his mission, and is to bring sovereignty back to the Iranian people and let them choose their own destiny. That has been his entire mission for the past 47 years, right? A lot of people suggest that he's going to be a tyrant because his father was a tyrant, so he's going to be like his father, which is nonsense. His father was also obsessed with making Iran democratic, and he was always trying to make Iran more democratic. A lot of times they suggest that he's going to be a tyrant because Khomeini also said that he's not going to be a tyrant and he wanted to bring a republic. And so, because Khomeini said it and then he didn't do it, so we shouldn't believe this man either. So, if you trust Reza Pahlavi's words, it's basically that you're the same idiot who believed Khomeini's word. And to that, we always say that Khomeini literally wrote in his book before the revolution that he wants to bring Islamic rule upon people, and people didn't bother to read it. While everything, when it comes to the record of Prince Reza Pahlavi, shows that he has always been fighting for democracy, right? So the record of like it's not our fault that the people who believed in Khomeini didn't bother to not even read the books of the people the person they were choosing as their leader, right? And at the end of the day, every revolution needs a leader, and if the record of the person is not good enough, then we might as well not have a revolution, because then we can't trust anybody ever. Well, is there a chance that all of these for 47 years he's been lying to us and he's like secretly has a plan to become a dictator? Well, everything is possible. But if the man's record is not good enough, then we might as well just cancel this whole revolution and go home and just accept the Islamic Republic, because there's nobody, we can't trust anybody. But also now they have this new thing, a new reason why they say this is dictatorial and Prince Reza Pahlavi is not respecting democracy. The two new ways is that the coalition that has been created, and Prince Reza Pahlavi being considered the leader of the revolution, has closed the door to all the other leaders of the revolution. And this shows that they are not being accepting of other people's leadership, and that the door is not open. They do not believe in diversity. They're not bringing Kurdish leadership, women leadership. So why does he have to be the leader? So this is undemocratic. That's one point they bring up. And another point that they bring up regarding Prince Reza Pahlavi, trying to say that Prince Reza Pahlavi is undemocratic, is that if you read the IPP, the Iran Prosperity Project, the 100-day emergency plan for the transitional period, if you read that, what you will see is that Prince Reza Pahlavi is basically in that transition period is a leader of basically all the different institutions during the transitional period, according to that booklet. So they're like, oh, look, they're already admitting. They're already admitting that he's going to come and he's going to be the leader of everything. Oh, a third reason why they say he's going to be a tyrant is because a lot of his supporters are attacking the people who are anti-Pahlavi. They're like, oh, look how they're behaving right now. They're swearing at us. They're attacking us online. If this is what they're doing now, imagine what they would do when they get the power. They're going to actually come down on us. They're going to bring back Savak and they're going to be torturing us. So look at how they're behaving online. So this shows that once Pahlavi is in power, they're going to be dictators, right? So and now what's happening is that now that the Iranian people are shouting his name, I will respond to all of those 3 points. What was the first one that I mentioned? Yeah, okay, I remember.
And
so
he's going to be just like
now that, oh yeah, just like Khomeini. Let me actually write that. So Khomeini. No, I already responded to that. No. Transitional. Diversity, transitional, and behavior online. So I need to respond to all of these behaviors online. All right. So now they started a campaign as an anti-Pahlavi campaign to basically suggest that we tell us about democracy. This is the hashtag that they have started as democracy, to suggest that we are democratic and let us teach you about democracy, because the pro-Pahlavi people are not being inclusive and democratic, and we're going to start a campaign to teach people about democracy. And that way we will teach you so people could know that apparently because they're saying that all these people who are shouting Pahlavi's name, they are they need education because Iranian people are making the same mistake. They don't understand democratic values, and that's why they're calling Pahlavi's name. So we need to teach them about democracy. And democracy, for a very long time, has now been used as a code word for let we should be included, not just Pahlavi. And by we, we're talking about Masih Alinejad, Narges Mohammadi, and Kurdish, the leaders of Kurdish separatist parties. So, and if you don't accept these people, you're being non-inclusive, and you that shows that you guys are a whole bunch of uneducated idiots who should listen to more elite people who understand democratic values to because basically Pahlavi supporters are basically a bunch of idiots. That's what they're suggesting with this whole process, right? So democracy is now the key word for this guy is being creating an exclusive environment for where he could only lead and nobody else is allowed it, right? So let me actually address all of this one by one. So when it comes to diversity, they say like, oh, we need more diversity, and Prince Reza Pahlavi has made himself the leader of the transitional period, but the transitional government without accepting all these other potential leaders, right? So, and also you saw Masih Alinejad, for example, Iran International saying he calling Prince Reza Pahlavi the self-declared leader of the transitional period, right? So the problem with that is the thing is that Prince Reza Pahlavi's coalition is very diversified, right? Diversity doesn't mean that you have multiple leaders. Diversity just means that multiple groups are represented in your coalition. So under the umbrella of Prince Reza Pahlavi's leadership, there are Kurdish groups, there are Turkish groups, there are women rights advocates, there are Baluchi groups, there are many, many different groups, and the vast majority of Baluchi support Prince Reza Pahlavi, Kurdish people, Azeri people, LGBT people, from every demographic, the vast majority of Iranians support Prince Reza Pahlavi. Diversity doesn't mean that you have to have a coalition of leaders. In fact, if you study the history of revolutions which are successful usually have been caused by a unified people under one person's leadership rather than a coalition of leaders. So based on historical records, it's better to have like you could have a company that has multiple different departments, but you have one CEO. Just because you have multiple departments doesn't mean that you have to have multiple CEOs. At the end of the day, you need one leader to basically give the direction to everybody. So when they are talking about diversity, they're talking about anti-Pahlavi people being allowed in. But the problem is anti-Pahlavi people don't want to work with Pahlavi anyways. But because the Pahlavi name has become the symbol of unity, they want to basically use it as a ladder, even though they're against it. But it doesn't make sense for Pahlavi supporters to allow people in who have always been against Pahlavi and continue to be against Pahlavi, just so for them to use his name as a ladder and then push him aside. So yeah, everybody's welcome unless you're against us. If you're against us, then what the hell does that mean? Like, how could we unite with people who are they transparently say that they're against Pahlavi? Like that doesn't make any sense to work with them. For the regarding the accusation of during the transitional period, he is the leader of everything, right? And like who voted him to become the leader of all of these different institutions in the transitional period. This shows that they're actually uneducated because that's the nature of a transitional government. The transitional government is always undemocratic because the point of the transitional government is to get us to a point where we could have elections. That's why we call it transitional. If there was elections for a transitional government, it wouldn't be transitional anymore. People have voted. It would just be the government, right? So again, what people have to understand is that we have three periods: the revolution period, the transitional period, and the post-transition period. The post-transition period is when we're going to have democracy. When people say like tell us about democracy during the revolution, they're retarded because revolutions in the mid you cannot have democracy in the middle of a fucking revolution. You do revolution to bring about democracy. You don't do democracy to have revolutions. It's the other way around. Like when you had the like people like, oh, your revolution is non-democratic. A revolution can't be democratic because you cannot have ballot boxes for the Iranian people to participate in an election. Like, can you show me how the French Revolution was democratic? Can you show me how the American Revolution was democratic? Did they have elections for the leaders of the American Revolution? No, they didn't, because that is not possible. All you could do is choose a leader based on what seems to be the most popular person, that the person that has the highest authority and legitimacy. Even though you can't have election, there are other data that would demonstrate that, so that you could get to a point where you have elections, and then you would choose the leaders based on the ballot box. But this is why for the transition period, the Iranian people have demonstrated, not through the ballot box, but by every other way possible, have shown that they want the leader of the revolution and the transitional period to be Prince Reza Pahlavi and no one else. The Iranian people have not only demonstrated that they want Pahlavi, but they also have demonstrated that they don't want this to be anyone else to be partnering with Prince Reza Pahlavi. In fact, many supporters of Prince Reza Pahlavi stood against him when he was creating a coalition of leaders with Masih Ali-Nejad and Abdullah Motadi and Hamid Ismailion. They were attacking their own leader, like, we don't want these other people as leader. We don't trust them. We only want you as a leader, which eventually was the reason why that whole coalition broke apart. So the Iranian people are not just saying we want Pahlavi. They're saying we want Pahlavi and no one else. So Prince Reza Pahlavi is only responding to the request of the Iranian people, sometimes against what he himself has been advocating for, because he himself has been advocating for a coalition of leaders, but he gave in to the demands of the people. So everything Princess of Pahlavi does is in response to Iranian people's demands. So when it comes to the behavior of people online, a lot of people say the Pahlavi people are undemocratic. Just look at how vile they are, how much they're attacking anybody who's not in support of Pahlavi online. This behavior shows that they will one day also be tyrannical and dictatorial once they get some power. What they don't tell you is that this type of behavior comes from every side. Every side does this to other, like, there are examples of all people swearing at each other online. What they also don't tell you is that the Pahlavi people are the only people among all of these groups that don't have physical violence in their record, right? So if you look at the reformers, they have terror and torture and physical violence in their record. If you look at the Kurdish groups, they have terror, killing of other Kurdish groups, and torture in their record. If you look at the leftists and the MEK, they have killing, terror, and torture in their record. But when it comes to the pro Pahlavi people, yeah, sure. Do some of them attack everybody, like go around? I mean, I do that, honestly. I swear at people who are anti Pahlavi. Okay, I don't even know why that's wrong. Okay, we get online. We gets very heated and we attack each other online, right? They do that more than we do. Okay, but what our side hasn't done, which is actually, guys, even if at some point they do that, it will take years of Pahlavi supporters to be killing and torturing and raping, honestly, to be able to get to the level of all of these other non-Pahlavi groups. But but it's actually quite impressive that they don't even have. It's like, what I mean. Okay, they have one example of somebody fingering somebody. Okay, but other than that, other than that,
What
there is
the?
no physical violence.
What the?
Yeah,
Wait, are you
yeah.
talking
Somebody
about
there
the guy
was there
that
were
got his ass fingered? It was a man, right? That got his
Yeah,
ass.
yeah, yeah,
That
that guy.
was
Yeah.
so
So
crazy.
other than that one small example, okay, there are no examples of murder. There's no examples of torture, and there's no examples of beating anybody up, which is a very impressive, clean record of Pahlavi supporters, given that they are the highest number of people, right? So they have the highest number of people. So you would have thought that by now, I mean, given the law of large numbers, some of them are insane. At least if a few percentage of them would have done something crazy by now. So when they tell you, like, oh my god, these Pahlavi supporters are so uncivilized, they don't tell you that they have a cleaner record when it comes to behavior than anyone else. one thing too much, too much, by the way, has turned anti-Pahlavi. It's like very aggressively anti-Pahlavi. He came out and said, like, oh, let me tell you about democracy. You have to listen to the minorities. Like, if minority voices are not included, then this is not democratic, which actually shows that he doesn't understand how democracy works, because that's the opposite of what democracy is about. He is somebody who has been trying to cancel the revolution, telling people to go home and just start reading, because apparently Iranian people are too uneducated to do revolution right now. So he has been trying to cancel the revolution and telling people to basically leave the streets and go home and study books so that they become educated enough to actually know what they want, because apparently they have chosen Pahlavi and they have chosen wrong. So too much himself shows that he doesn't understand what democracy is, because paying attention to minorities, that's actually liberalism, classical liberal values. That is not democracy. That is a limitation of democracy. Democracy is the voice of the majority. Paying like focusing on minorities is basically a limitation on democracy, a good limitation of democracy, to avoid the tyranny of the majority. But that is not in line with democracy. That is actually a limitation on democracy. So that shows that the people who are saying, who talking about, oh, go learn about democracy, don't even, like, he spent 1 year reading books, but he still doesn't understand the definition of democracy and is lecturing other people about it. Wait, did I answer everything, by the way, Sabina? I think I went over everything.
I think so.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So yeah. Sorry, that took it took a while, but I think that was I think the most complete explanation of what we're going through when it comes to these campaigns, anti-Pahlavi campaigns that we're having. So just so that you all know, by the way, Pahlavi has, like, when we say we are for Pahlavi, that means we are for 4 things. These are the 4 things that Pahlavi stands for. Okay, democracy, or basically the right to self-determination, secularism, border integrity, and equal individual rights before the law.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, next we have Shauna.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My question is, you may not even have any information or thoughts about this, but apparently Elon's going to be putting in like AI and SpaceX and stuff into space, and he's planning on basically taking over the sky highway. Apparently there's not a lot of I can't remember the word they used for it, but essentially, if he can colonize not Mars, although that obviously that's long-term goal, but even just take over basically the super highway in the sky, he can impact that. And I just kind of, I don't know too much about it. I don't know if you know too much about it, but he's combining that with AI. And then the other thing too is, what are your thoughts just in general when companies are bigger than governments? Because one of the things we're seeing with SpaceX and this growth of AI and this new tech is I feel concerns about our democracy or our democratic republic in the United States kind of eroding and creating that sort of a situation where the people don't really have a say. I mean, already things are just like crazy centralized in ways that anti-monopoly bills were designed to stop, but they've just found loopholes that have functional monopolies. So I don't know if you have any thoughts about that. That's it.
Yeah. So, AI in space and Mars are not, Mars is so much farther away from the place that they would put AI in space. And the whole point of that is just to, apparently, is just to make sure that at least it's going to be one of the main limitations of AI is energy and cooling, right? So if you put the processing of AI in space, you have a lot more access to solar energy, and also you could also re basically the energy could then be distributed into space for cooling, so you don't have to worry about cooling as much as you have to worry about it on Earth. That's the point of putting it in space. Some people have found a lot of problems with that, but
I do remember
yep.
about that. They were talking about the heating and cooling was the concern, but there's also not as much space in that area of space that you can colonize. So there's
I mean,
limitations,
you're
just
not
like there were.
colonizing. It's like empty
Well,
space.
I know I'm using the word colonize liberally. I don't mean it in a
I
literal.
mean, there's nobody living there last time I checked, so there's nobody to colonize, right?
Okay, take
Yeah.
over. I don't know. Build, like, if it's the analogy that I heard was that it's kind of like the railroads, where the first person who gets there basically is going to control the rules of that
Um,
infrastructure.
Can I say
yeah, that's
something
pretty
about it? Yeah, okay. I don't think you understand how
dirty.
massive space is. Like, to the point that just between the distance of the moon and Earth, you can fit the entire solar system, like planets next to each other.
No, I
Like, there's
understand
plenty of space.
no, I understand there's plenty of space in space, but there's technology. Okay, I'm gonna actually just do research on this so I can explain what I'm
It's
talking
okay.
about
It's okay.
better.
I think we're getting off topic, anyways. Regarding companies and governments, companies getting bigger than governments. Honestly, I'm more worried about governments getting too big than companies getting too big. And I do think big companies are a good check on governments. I do believe that I think companies getting too big is not a monopoly, because as long as they're not working with each other, a lot of people think that monopoly is just mean big companies are not monopoly.
I don't
As
think
long as
I
let
don't.
me, I didn't say you, but let me finish my point. I'm just saying that there's no violation of anti-monopoly laws for companies to get as big as possible. And companies getting big means that they're producing something useful. That's how companies get big, right? So I'm against monopoly. I think it's good for companies to maintain anti-monopoly laws. But if giant companies are growing, but they're competing with each other while they're growing, well, then let them grow as long as they're competing with each other, right?
Okay, but what about when they
Um,
don't have competition? Like Amazon functionally has no competition. Half of the country is dependent on them. Just saying, but
Amazon has no competition on what product? On what product and what service that they have no competition
delivery,
on?
like functionally. I mean, everybody uses them.
Everybody uses. No, that's not true. Just because no, many people use them because they prefer their service, but there are other options. There are other options for delivery. There are many other options for delivery, but people use them because they prefer their service. You can't punish companies for providing better services, right? You don't want to punish them.
I'm not saying punish them. I
I'm not
don't
saying
want.
what you're saying. I'm not
Okay.
saying what you're saying. But if a company is managing to get a big section of the market share because their service or their product is superior, the government getting involved and saying no to that is basically punishing serving your customers better than other people. We don't want to do that, right? We want to basically reward companies for having a superior product or service. And again, companies growing is a good thing, because how do companies grow? Companies grow. If a company is growing, they only grow by providing a service or a product better than other companies. That's how you grow. So when that's how economies grow. The reason why America is a superpower is because it has the biggest companies. Like that's something that Americans are proud of. Look at Europe in the tech sector; it doesn't have a single company as large of American companies.
No,
That is something that America.
I
But
am, but
let me actually let me actually make my points, and then maybe you could get in.
okay,
Is that
okay,
okay?
okay.
Okay. So the main sources of power that we have to look at are governments, companies, and individuals. So this is what we have to be mindful of, right? The centralization of power is something that we should be worried about. The power itself should not be something that we're worried about. We need power. We need some centralization of power. So we have to come up with a balance of how much centralization of power that we want, right? Individuals themselves don't have much leverage because they're just individuals, right? But individuals get to have leverage as individuals through companies or governments. So companies are supposed to be a representative of individuals, and individuals get to represent themselves through these companies by their purchasing power, and they get their purchasing power by exchanging their labor for that purchasing power. So the more you give, the more purchasing power you have, and the companies will be serving you, the companies through their products and services. The companies are both a source of you gaining that leveraging power because you give your labor to them to get that economic agency as a leverage of power. Those same companies are also a place where you use your economic agency that you got from the companies to then have an influence, have an impact by buying the product and services that makes your life better, right? So that is a non-democratic system. The more you give, the more you could take from it. But the companies are supposed to be a representative of our a source and also a destination of our economic agency. But then we have the government. The government is supposed to be an equalizing force where your wallet becomes less influential, not completely irrelevant, but less influential. And just by being a citizen, your government gets to act on your behalf. And then with your vote, you have some political agency. So then with the companies as a representation of your economic agency, the government is supposed to be a representative of your political agency. So as in, if we people who believe in classical liberal values, we care about the individual. We want the companies to grow. We want the government to also be influential, but we want the government to become powerful. But we want, in both cases, the economic agency, the economic power of companies to not be centralized. So that's why we're against monopoly. And also the political power of our government, we don't want it to be centralized as well. That's why we believe in Montesquieu's three branches of government, basically checks and balances and all of that stuff, right? So when it comes to companies, we want the companies to grow, but the best way to make sure that the power of the companies do not become too centralized is by making sure that they are competing against each other. So if one company is becoming so big, it's also competing against other big companies. And this is why we also believe in global trade, because even if you manage to become a huge big player in your own country, because the goal of these companies is to basically compete, win competition on a global scale, they have to worry about other companies from China and allowing other companies to come into your country and compete with the companies in your own country keeps your companies on their toes as well. Because even if you have dominated in your own country, you have to worry about all of a sudden like a Chinese manufacturer coming into your country and competing with your cars that you're making or whatever. So this is why lower tariffs and free trade among different countries basically is a good way to basically stop monopolies, because you're constantly competing with other companies. Samantha, these thumbs downs is really not helping. It's just like, if you have something to say, like maybe write down why you're against it, put it in the chat, because I keep missing my point where I am. Like write it in the chat so I could actually respond to what your point is, because just thumbs down is not like, I don't know.
Sorry.
No, but write your points because I want to have something to respond to. But
She's
what
like,
was I? What was I?
boo!
Boo! No. Every
This
time I
guy
say free,
sucks.
every time I say big companies, she's like boo. Every time I say free trade, she's like boo. Okay, it's okay. It's okay. Though. It's okay. We love you. We love you. No, keep doing it. It's kind of adorable. What was I saying? Oh yeah. When it comes to so with governments, we try to avoid centralization of power. With America has done a very good job to try to reduce the centralization of power. So you could come up with a structure of government that avoids that. But also the big companies also avoid centralization of power in the government. You know how? Because when your companies are growing, that's because your people are getting richer. So here's when you have here's when you have democracy. Democracy is a result of the power of the people. Democracy is not just something that we just wish for and it happens because we believe it in as a value. Democracy is the deterministic result of the balance of the people's power increasing relative to their government, so they have leverage over their government, and that power is economic. That leverage is economic leverage. So there, if you actually track when countries become democracy, it's usually after the relative wealth of people becomes high compared to the relative economic power of their government. Democracy is a natural result of the people getting richer on average relative to the economic power of their government. So if allowing, when companies get richer, that's individuals getting richer, because that's your income, that's your 401k, that's your pension, that's your purchasing power that is getting bigger. So, and the companies growing means that this main source of the government's revenue is tax income, because people are getting richer, they're trading more, and they have to pay tax more, and that makes the government answerable to the people. And that's why it's actually a good check on government, the power of the government, for people to keep getting richer and richer and richer, and your companies to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Because even if the government doesn't want to serve the people, because all of a sudden the power has become too centralized, and the government has the idea that, oh, maybe I could basically become dictatorial and not serve my people. If you have really giant companies in your country, then what happens is that it's in the best financial interest of these giant companies for everything to continue being the benefit of the people, because these people are their customers and their workers. So you could actually force your governments to become more democratic, because democracy is good for business. So big companies is a good check on government as well. So this is why I'm not against big companies. I'm against monopoly, but I'm not against big companies. And in fact, I want my companies in my country to be a force to be reckoned with, and my governments to be afraid of the private sector in my society. But okay, thank you so much.
Okay, I have a couple points about that though. There's a little bit of a problem with this, which is like during the kind of high level censorship years where you couldn't say literally anything until Elon, thank God, freed us. So yes, sometimes a man, even a man that I don't necessarily like, can do a good thing. You know, heroes aren't perfect, okay? But you know, he, during that high censorship year, there was a concerted effort by both the big tech companies and by the government to censor Twitter. And this is still going on in England and the UK.
But let me just say that actually proves my point, because once, when it comes to the private sector, at some point, if people want a certain product and it's not there, somebody's going to come offer it, and X came and offered it. It will only take that long. But yeah, let's
Okay.
go. Let's go.
Okay, and then the other point is, I guess I disagree with you with the idea that individuals
Let's go.
always debate individuals. We'll talk about this later, though.
Let's talk about this later.
Okay, next we have Susanna.
I was gonna ask you about Golshifteh Farahani, but you basically already were talking about all of that. Shaheen Najafi had an epic video about it on his channel today, or it was yesterday. And the English to Persian subtitles are like surprisingly good. And that man is so on point. Like in other news, I've started to try to put together like the PDF of information for survivors of torture in Persian. Like getting a translation in Google Gemini like is actually very easy and reliable. My problem is that like I can't read Persian, so I can't format the fucking PDF. So if there's anyone who wants to help me, you can DM me on here on
Actually,
School.
Gemini does that as well. Tell it to format the PDF.
I don't know, but I can't tell if it's right.
Oh, okay. Well,
You know,
then
I
give
can't
it to
read
me.
it, so I don't know if it's any good.
Right.
Okay. But I'll be here.
Yeah. Okay.
Bye.
Okay, Sapir.
Okay, continuing Susanna point with the PDF, I wanted to offer to make a drive or something that we can put all the videos, picture, witnesses, everything that we can gather. This is a thing that we personally also did in October 7th, because I feel like there's so many things that are circulating in the internet, some of them from other conflicts, and then people can use it to be like, oh, this is from another country, and so what's happening in Iran is not real. So I want to create a driver that we can just put all the verified imagery from Iran. So one, it can help all of us and anyone here that wants to post things. And two, it's also something that we can pass to media on obviously the consent of the person that adds it. So that's one thing that I would like to do, and I will put a link to a Drive folder in the end of this conversation. Other than that, I wanted to see your opinion about what happened today with the 15 crew members that were kidnapped by the regime. And do you think there will be any international response soon? Because we know that from the US, they sent another naval unit, but it's obvious at this point that both the US and Israel will not act till the plan is pretty much perfect.
Yeah, I mean, by the way, do we still, for people who might just came here, so the Islamic Republic decided to attack a couple of oil tankers in the middle, like right before the negotiations between Witkoff and Arakchi. They took a bunch of oil tankers and kidnapped all the crew members. Do we know the nationality of the crew members, or not yet? Sapir, do we know?
I personally couldn't find it, but the moment there will be an update, I can let you know.
This is so unreal because to me, this basically, all the people who wanted to suggest that, there's no point negotiating with the Islamic Republic. I mean, do they need to say anything anymore? I mean, this is what they're doing right before the negotiations, right? It's like they're daring Trump to attack, right? Again, I mentioned to Jeffrey at the beginning of the stream that maybe they want the attack to start earlier because they think that the attack is inevitable, and just allowing the United States and Israel to prepare longer doesn't make any sense, and it's in their best interest that if it's going to happen anyway, to make it happen sooner. But Sapir, so what was your specific question regarding all
Do
of
you
this?
think if any other countries would say something about it, since it only happened today, we didn't really see any comments from anywhere else?
Well, I was asking you about the nationality of the people involved.
We don't know
must
yet.
say most countries seem to not have the balls to actually defend their
To talk
citizens
about it,
as much
yeah.
as Israel and United States. These are the two main countries that I've always seen that go do everything they need to do to bring their citizens home wherever they are. So, given that we've seen European countries not to do much when the Islamic Republic kidnaps their citizens, I wonder if they're going to do much when it's not even their citizen. They have such a bad record when it comes to actually speaking out for bringing their own citizens home, let alone for citizens of other countries.
The reason that
yeah.
I thought maybe there would be something is because of the recent few countries that started to be like, okay, now we designate the IRGC as not legitimate in a terror.
I mean, the European countries didn't declare IRGC as a terrorist group even when the IRGC was busy kidnapping their citizens, right?
Yeah.
So, but I mean, which countries are you talking about? Because now the European countries have already declared IRGC as a terrorist group.
That's what's been happening recently. I am gonna make the drive real quick. I'm gonna post it here in the chat. I'm gonna post it in school as well. If any of you have any messages that you got, any videos, any pictures you have saved that you know for a fact that from Iran, because I've already seen multiple things circulating from other conflicts, then put it there.
But by the way, I just want to mention that if you're Israeli or American, you have to consider yourself very lucky that you have governments that are disinterested in protecting you, because not that many governments are like that.
In Israel, we have an app that is basically telling us throughout the entire world. He picks up a location, and if there's something that might be in danger or a pro-Palestinian protest that is around, it alerts us to not go to those streets and stuff or those specific cities in lifetime, and gets updates from the government when we're
Which
abroad.
app you're talking about? Which app you're talking about?
It's an app for Israeli. Let me look how it's called again.
All right, I have only 20 minutes.
Yeah, it's called the Situation Room, and it's basically, I can be like that.
10 seconds.
Yeah, okay. Basically, the Situation Room, it's in Hebrew, but it's basically
Okay.
alerts thing for Jews to get away from specific areas.
All right, thank you. All right.
Okay, we have 19 minutes. Cat lady? Yeah, kitty, 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 kitty. Okay. Samantha?
Short.
Okay, I was gonna say that when Armin was talking about how, like, what's it called? They're like trying to the anti-Pahlavi people are trying to like re like use the word like I'm trying to think. How do you? What is the term? Like rebranding the word? Is there or recasting the word? Yeah, like trying to repurpose word.
Repurpose.
Yeah, it kind of like reminded me of like the pro-Pali people or anti-Israel people, the way they'll like use words like the what's it called? Equal. They'll use the term equal rights to mean like Israel,
Oh,
basically. Yeah, like the equal rights as in Israel needs to give all Arabs who are not citizens of Israel the same rights as Israeli citizens and therefore take down the wall in between Israel and the Arabs who are not Israeli citizens and want to go kill the Israeli citizens. Like that.
right.
And
So
like
you're saying.
the justice, where their definition is justice is shit that's probably against the Geneva Convention.
So you're saying the lack of understanding of political terms were in among the anti-Pahlavi people when they use democracy and they don't understand the meaning of the word and they confuse it with liberalism, or also they don't understand that democracy is something that comes after revolution and they're trying to misuse it as a way to attack Reza Pahlavi. That reminds you of how equal rights is misused among anti-Israelis to
Yep.
attack Israel. Right, exactly. And the misunderstanding there is equal rights are supposed to be for your citizens, right? And this is something
Yeah.
that Piers Morgan even doesn't understand. Piers Morgan, like in his show, like, aren't you for equal rights between Israelis and Palestinians? I'm like, no, we're not. In the same way that we're not for equal rights between Americans and Canadians, Canadians should have equal rights among Canadians, and Americans should have equal rights among Americans. Americans should not have equal rights to Canadians, because imagine if an American comes and like, this is not justice. Why are Canadians not giving me free healthcare? Like, why are they only giving free healthcare to Canadians? Why are they not giving it to me as an American? Well, because you're not Canadian. They give the equal rights under Canadian laws are for their citizens. You can't expect any government to give their rights that they give to their citizens to people who are not citizens of their country. We don't ask this from anybody. So it's retarded for us to ask Israelis to basically give their rights to their citizens to people who are their enemies. What the hell? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
Also, I don't know how much you want to just keep the subject on our own, or if I could say something briefly about international trade.
Yeah.
Okay. Just argument against international trade. What if we have a country that is using some very serious exploitation that is practically working people to death, and therefore is able to mass produce something relatively cheaply because they're just totally exploiting working people to absolute fucking death to mass produce some item very cheaply. I am far more cheaply than any country that's following any humane guidelines whatsoever. Should we really be like engaging in that and like buying this mass produced product that's produced cheaply through exploitation? Or should we maybe as a country at certain points say, fuck it, no, we will not buy this item produced in this country?
All right, so it depends. Okay, just short answer. When you say exploitation, are you suggesting that is forced labor, meaning
Yeah.
that these workers? Hold on, let me give you the two options, right? Like, are these workers do they have the option not to work? Okay, like, is it slavery basically, or is
Yes, in
it
my
that
scenario, it is
because?
basically
Oh
slavery.
my god, hold on, what?
In my scenario, I'm going to say it's basically slavery.
So what happens to them if they don't work?
Let's say they get killed. Let's say we have a dictatorship country that will
Yeah.
kill you if you're not engaged in this forced labor thing where you're working like 18-hour days, 365 days a week, or they'll kill you.
Okay, if they kill you, then yeah, I would be in favor of not buying from them. Right? But if a scenario is like, oh, it's forced labor because if they don't work, they will go hungry. Well, then by not buying from them, you're making them go hungry, right? So the cost of labor in that country is very, very low, right? And that's why they're getting paid very low. Like they're basically getting paid very low amounts for the labor. Then you should buy from them. Because if you don't, then the alternative is that they go hungry, right? But if they're literally going to get killed because, if they don't work, like if it's forced labor, it's not like that, Jewish Samantha. Usually it's not like, other than maybe the Uyghurs in China, most of the time when people are talking about exploitation, you're actually putting those people in worse conditions if you don't buy from them because you decided that, oh, they're not getting paid enough. So you basically decided that maybe let's bring about a situation where they're not getting paid at all. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Most of the time when people are talking about exploitation, they're talking about they're not getting paid enough or their working conditions are bad. Well, you're making their conditions a lot worse by deciding not to buy from them.